The 1980s were the peak of American consumerism. Reagan was in office, malls were cathedrals, and every small town in America thought the good times would never end. Neon signs hummed over packed parking lots. Factory whistles blew at 5 p.m. sharp, and middle-class families drove Buicks to all-you-can-eat buffets without a single thought about tomorrow. But then the party ended. And some towns, they didn't get the memo. They're still there, frozen, wearing shoulder pads in a hoodie world. Their storefronts still have that 1985 pastel paint faded now, peeling at the edges. The Pizza Hut closed in '91, but the roof is still that unmistakable red. The Jeek Penny Anchor store at the mall, shuttered, but the mannequins are still in the window, staring out at a parking lot where grass now grows through the cracks. These are the towns where the clock stops somewhere between 1983 and 1989, where the ghosts of the middle class still haunt the aisles of dead shopping centers, where people still live not because they want to, but because leaving costs money they don't have. Welcome to the strangest corner of American geography, places that died in the 80s but forgot to lay down. We're counting down 10 towns ranked by aesthetic decay from faded to completely apocalyptic. This isn't surface level, and trust me, you're not ready for what's at number 1. Let's break it down. Number 10, Cairo, Illinois. The river stopped flowing, and so did everything else. In 1920, Cairo, Illinois was the envy of the Mississippi River. Sitting at the exact confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, this was the trading hub of the heartland. Steamboats, railroads, hotels that looked like they belonged in New Orleans. By the 1950s, Cairo had over 15,000 residents, a thriving downtown, and the kind of civic pride you only see in black and white photographs of men in hats shaking hands in front of ribbon cuttings. The 80s, Cairo was already on life support, but it still had a pulse. There were still shops open, still families trying to make it work. The bones of grandeur were visible ornate Victorian buildings, cobblestone streets, a waterfront that whispered of a more prosperous past. Cairo didn't die from one wound. It bled out slowly. Racial tensions in the 1960s led to white flight and business closures. Then came the Reagan recession. Then NAFTA. Then the factories that hadn't already left finished packing up. By 1990, the writing wasn't just on the wall, it was the only thing left on the wall. The music officially died in 1988, when the last major employer shuttered and Cairo became a case study in American abandonment. Drive through Cairo today, and you'll swear you've entered a post-apocalyptic film set. The Gem Theater, once the crown jewel of Southern Illinois entertainment, stands hollow, its marquee letters long gone, its ticket booth filled with debris. Victorian mansions with wraparound porches rot into the earth, their gingerbread trim hanging like loose teeth. The storefronts on Commercial Avenue are pure 1980s decay. Faded plastic signs advertising businesses that haven't existed in 30 years. Awnings torn and flapping in the wind. And weeds, so many weeds pushing through every crack in the sidewalk. There's a beauty to it if you squint. It's the aesthetic of what if everyone just left. Population today, under 1,800, that's an 88% drop from its peak. Whole blocks are empty. Whole neighborhoods have returned to nature. So why does anyone still live here? Because some people never left. Their families have been here for generations. Their grandparents built these homes. Leaving would mean abandoning not just property, but identity. Also, houses here cost almost nothing. We're talking $10,000 for a Victorian fixer-upper. For some, that's freedom. For others, it's a trap with a picket fence. One user on a small-town subreddit put it perfectly. I bought a 4-bedroom house in Cairo for $8. 0. I'm either a genius or the opening scene of a horror movie. Either way, I have a yard now. Let's be blunt. Cairo is rough. The infrastructure is crumbling literally. Pipes burst. Roads go unrepaired. There are no grocery stores. No hospital. The nearest Walmart is a 30-minute drive. The opioid crisis hit hard here, and poverty rates hover around 50%. You're not buying a cheap house. You're buying a project in a town with no services and no economy. That Victorian dream home. Hope you know how to do your own plumbing. Would you find peace in Cairo's silence, the kind of quiet that only comes from complete abandonment? Or would the emptiness drive you to madness? Number 9. Braddock, Pennsylvania. Steel bones. Empty streets. Braddock wasn't just a steel town, it was the steel town, home to Andrew Carnegie's first steel mill, the Edgar Thomson Works. This was where American industry was literally forged. In 1920, Braddock had over 20,000 residents. Workers poured out of row houses at dawn, lunch pails in hand, and the sky glowed orange from the furnaces at night. By 1980, Braddock still believed in steel. The mill was running. The union was strong. Families still gathered at the local diner after church on Sundays. There was pride here, the kind built on generations of hard labor and the belief that America would always need what Braddock made. Then the bottom fell out. Steel imports flooded the market. Mills started closing across the Moan Valley. Between 1980 and 1990, Braddock lost over half its remaining population. The number that sticks. 1980 to the year U.S. Steel announced massive layoffs that gutted the region. By 1988, Braddock's commercial district was a ghost town. Shops closed. Families left. The tax base evaporated. Today, Braddock's population hovers around 1,700. That's a 90% drop from its peak. 90%. Braddock looks like a skeleton wearing a tuxedo. The architecture is stunning: massive brick buildings with ornate facades, churches with Gothic spires, row houses that once held 3 generations of steel worker families. But they're empty, gutted. Windows missing like knocked out teeth. The main street is a museum of 1980s commerce, faded signs for hardware stores, a shuttered 5 and dime, a bar that closed so long ago the neon sign is rusted into abstract art. The Carnegie Library, yes, that Carnegie still stands. A monument to what this town once meant to American industry. There's something hauntingly beautiful about it. The scale of the buildings tells you this was a place that mattered. The emptiness tells you it doesn't anymore. Braddock has become a magnet for artists, urban pioneers, and people priced out of Pittsburgh, which is only 9 miles away. You can buy a row house here for $15,000, sometimes less at auction. For people willing to swing a hammer, embrace the grit, Braddock offers something rare: space, history, and a front row seat to either a revival or a collapse. As one Braddock transplant wrote, "I traded my Brooklyn rent for a whole building in Braddock." Yeah, there's no coffee shop, but I own a building. Tell me who won. Braddock is not for the faint of heart. Violent crime rates are significantly above the national average. Many homes are beyond saving, structurally compromised and filled with decades of neglect. The job market is essentially Pittsburgh's job market, minus the easy commute and the psychological weight of living in a place that feels like it's actively decaying around you. That's real. Every boarded-up window is a reminder that this town was supposed to die. Could you build a life in the shadow of a dead steel empire? Or would the ghost of 20,000 workers be too loud to ignore? Number 8. Salton Sea, California. Bombay Beach, the resort that drowned in its own dream in the 1950s and 60s. Bombay Beach was the California Riviera for people who couldn't afford the actual Riviera. Located on the shores of the Salton Sea, an accidental lake created by an irrigation disaster in 1905, this was a boomtown of beach bars, yacht clubs, and weekend getaways. Celebrities visited. Speedboat races drew crowds. The American dream had a waterfront view and a cold beer waiting. By the 1980s, the dream was already souring, but people still came. The motels were open. The RV parks were full of retirees chasing one last taste of paradise. There was still hope that someone, developers, the government, anyone would save the Salton Sea. No one saved it. The sea, fed by agricultural runoff, became increasingly salty and toxic. Fish die-offs began in the 1980s. Massive, apocalyptic events where millions of tilapia washed ashore, rotting in the desert sun. The smell drove tourists away. Property values collapsed. By 1990, Bombay Beach was less resort town and more cautionary tale. The death blow. There wasn't one moment. It was a slow drowning. By 1987, the yacht club was closed. The motels followed. The sea itself began receding, leaving behind exposed lake bed, dust storms, and the skeletal remains of docks that once held speedboats. Bombay Beach today is pure post-apocalyptic poetry. Trailers from the 1970s sit half buried in sand. A rusted swing set overlooks a sea that's now a quarter-mile away. The beach is actually just dried mud, fish bones, and salt crust. But here's the twist. Artists discovered it. The decay became aesthetic. Now, there are art installations scattered among the ruins, a painted school bus, a drive-in movie screen showing nothing, sculptures made from the debris of the American dream. It's part ghost town, part open-air gallery, and 100% unsettling. The 1980s motel signs still stand. They're neon long dead, advertising vacancy to a clientele that will never come. Why live here? Because land is almost free. Lots sell for under $5,000. For artists, off-gridders, and people fleeing conventional society, Bombay Beach offers radical freedom. No, Ho is going to tell you not to build a sculpture garden out of mannequin parts. The population is around 150, many of them artists, eccentrics, and people who just want to be left alone. One resident posted, "I came here because I couldn't afford anywhere else. I stayed because where else can you watch the sunset over a toxic lake surrounded by art, made from broken dreams?" It's weirdly healing. The air quality is terrible. The storms from the exposed lake bed carry toxic particles. There's no grocery store, no hospital. Summer temperatures hit 120 F. The community is loose and sometimes lawless. And the smell, when the wind blows wrong, it smells like death. Because, technically, it is. Could you find beauty in Bombay Beach's decay? Or would the dust, the heat, and the skeleton fish be too much for your Instagram aesthetic? Number 7. Pineville, Kentucky. coal dust and empty storefronts, Pineville was once the gateway to Kentucky coal country, a bustling little city of company stores, packed diners, and miners who worked hard and spent harder. In 1980, coal was still king. The Reagan administration promised to bring back mining jobs, and Pineville believed it. The downtown had that small-town American glow, a movie theater with a real marquee, a department store where everyone knew your name, and Friday night football games that shut down the whole county. Coal didn't die overnight, it was murdered slowly by natural gas automation and environmental regulations. By 1988, the writing was on the wall. Mines closed. Young people left for Lexington, Louisville, anywhere with jobs. The population of Bell County dropped by 25% between 1980 and 2000. Pineville's downtown started going dark, one storefront at a time. The movie theater closed. The department store became a dollar store, then nothing. By 1990, Pineville wasn't dying, it was learning to live with a chronic illness. Walk through downtown Pineville today, and you'll swear you were on a movie set from 1985. The storefronts are frozen in time, hand-painted signs advertising shoe repairs and 5-and-dime goods, faded awnings in colors that were probably called harvest gold and avocado green. The sidewalks are buckled. The buildings are gorgeous old brick with ornate cornices, but half of them are empty. There's a beauty parlor with a sun-faded poster of a hairstyle that hasn't been popular since Dolly Parton's early career. The mountains loom over everything, beautiful and indifferent. This is coal country without the coal. People stay because this is home. Their families are buried in these hills. The cost of living is absurdly low, median home prices around $80,000. Rent under $600. For retirees and remote workers, Pineville offers stunning natural beauty and a pace of life that feels almost therapeutic. A local wrote, "Yeah, it's quiet. Maybe too quiet. But I own a 3-bedroom house with a mountain view for less than my buddy pays for a parking spot in Nashville." So who's really winning? The opioid crisis devastated this region. Poverty rates are high. Job opportunities are scarce. The infrastructure is aging, and the nearest major hospital is a 45-minute drive. Young people continue to leave, and the population skews older every year. Would you find peace in Pineville's mountain silence? Or would the weight of a dying industry feel too heavy to carry? Number 6, Flint, Michigan. The assembly line that stopped Flint, Michigan was General Motors. Not just a GM town, the GM town. This is where the company was born. In 1980, Flint had nearly 160,000 residents and dozens of auto plants employing tens of thousands of workers. The UAW was strong. Paychecks were fat. A factory worker could own a home, to cars, send kids to college, and retire with a pension. This was the American dream assembled on the line. Then GM started leaving. Not all at once, that would have been merciful. Instead, it was a slow bleed. Plant closures in 1987. More in 1992. Roger and Me, Michael Moore's documentary, captured the devastation in real time. By 1990, Flint had lost over 30,000 jobs. The population began its free fall from 160,000 to under 100,000 today, the year the music died. 1986, when GM announced it would eliminate 29,000 jobs in Flint over the next several years. The clock stopped, and it never started again. Flint's decay is industrial scale. Entire factory complexes sit empty, their windows shattered, their parking lots returning to prairie. The Buick City complex, once one of the largest auto plants in the world, is now a brownfield, a toxic scar on the landscape. Downtown Flint has that eerie 1980s time capsule feel. The old Woolworths building, the Art Deco theaters, the department stores with mannequins still frozen in the windows. Some buildings have been rehabbed, many more stand empty, their neon signs dead, their awnings tattered. The residential neighborhoods are a patchwork of survival. Well-maintained homes next to burned-out shells. Occupied blocks adjacent to entire streets that have been demolished. Houses in Flint can be purchased for under $20,000, sometimes under $10,000. For people willing to invest in a community that desperately needs investment, Flint offers opportunity. There's a growing arts scene, a dedicated core of residents fighting for revival, and institutions like the University of Michigan Flint providing stability. One Flint resident posted, "I bought my house for $12,000. My water is now safe, despite what you've heard. My neighbors look out for each other. Is it perfect? Hell no. But it's mine, and we're not giving up." The water crisis put Flint on the map for all the wrong reasons. While the water is now within federal standards, trust in local government remains shattered. Crime rates are among the highest in the nation. Poverty is endemic. The tax base is decimated, which means services are stretched thin. Flint isn't just a town that died in the 80s, it's a town that's been dying for 40 years and is still fighting for breath. Could you be part of Flint's comeback story? Or would the weight of so much loss be impossible to shake? Number 5. Natchez, Mississippi. Antebellum elegance, empty pockets before the Civil War. Natchez was one of the wealthiest cities in America per capita. More millionaires lived here than anywhere else in the country. Those fortunes, built on cotton and slavery, created some of the most stunning antebellum mansions in the South. Natchez survived the war largely intact, and by 1980, it was leaning hard into its heritage, pilgrimage tours, bed and breakfasts, and a tourism economy built on nostalgia for a very particular version of the past. In the 80s, Natchez still had manufacturing jobs, tire plants, paper mills to complement the tourism dollars. There was hope that the town could balance Old South charm with New South industry. That balance never held. The Armstrong tire plant, the largest employer, closed in 2001. But the bleeding started in the late 80s, and AFTA hit Mississippi hard. Manufacturing jobs left from Mexico. The tourism economy couldn't absorb the shock. By 1990, the population was already declining, and the young were leaving for Jackson, Memphis, anywhere with opportunity. The music died in slow motion, one factory closure at a time. Natchez is a paradox. The mansions are still their Greek revival columns, wraparound galleries, live oak stripping with Spanish moss. Their museum quality beautiful. But drive a few blocks from the tourist corridor, and you'll find decay. Shotgun houses with caved-in roofs, commercial buildings with broken windows, streets where the infrastructure is crumbling. Downtown is that frozen in amber quality. Antique shops, a vintage drugstore, marquees advertising shows that ended decades ago. The wealth is visible, but it's museum wealth preserved, not generated. The contrast is jarring. A $2 million mansion next to a $15,000 fixer-upper. History and poverty, side by side. People stay for the beauty, the history, and the almost supernatural quiet. Natchez has one of the best preserved collections of antebellum architecture in the country. For history lovers, writers, retirees, and anyone allergic to traffic, there's genuine appeal. One transplant wrote, "I bought a Victorian cottage for $65,000. It has a wraparound porch and a ghost that mostly keeps to the attic. In San Francisco, I couldn't afford a parking space. Here, I'm basically landed gentry. Broke landed gentry, but still. The economy is fragile. Tourism is seasonal. Jobs are scarce. Poverty rates hover around 30%. The racial history is complicated. Natchez's wealth was built on slavery, and the tourism industry has been slow to reckon with that legacy. For some, the beauty is undeniable. For others, it's uncomfortable. Could you make peace with Natchez's complicated past to enjoy its quiet present? Or would the ghosts literal and historical be to present? Number 4. Hibbing, Minnesota. The range that ran out Hibbing, Minnesota sits on the Iron Range, one of the richest iron ore deposits on Earth. In 1980, this was mining country, and mining was good. The open-pit Holrus mine was the largest in the world. Workers earned union wages. Main Street was packed with shops, bars, and restaurants serving miners who spent freely. Oh, and a kid named Robert Zimmerman grew up here before changing his name to Bob Dylan and writing the soundtrack to a Generation S rebellion in the 80s. Hibbing still had that working-class swagger, the kind of town where people built things with their hands and took pride in the dirt under their fingernails. Foreign steel imports gutted the American iron industry. Mines that had run continuously for decades began cutting shifts, then closing entirely. Between 1980 and 1990, employment in the Iron Range mining sector dropped by over 50%. Hibbing's population declined from its peak of 20,000 to around 16,000 today, the year the music died. Ironically fitting for Dylan's hometown, 1983, when the taconite industry hit its lowest point since the Great Depression. Hibbing's Main Street is a monument to mid-century American commerce. The Android Hotel, once the pride of the Iron Range, still stands. Its neon sign now dark more often than not. Storefronts advertise mining equipment, work boots, union halls. But many are empty, their windows covered with brown paper or for lease signs that have faded to illegibility. The architecture is stunning, 1920s commercial buildings with ornate brickwork. Theaters with marquees that haven't changed since Reagan's first term. The town hall is palatial, built when mine taxes overflowed the public coffers. But walk these streets on a winter afternoon and you'll feel the emptiness. The cold isn't just weather, it's economic. The buildings remember being full. Iron Range communities have fiercely loyal residents. Families have been here for generations. Finnish, Slovenian, Italian immigrants who built this place from ore and sweat. The cost of living is low. The lakes are beautiful, and for people who work remotely or are retired, there's a rugged appeal. Housing prices are remarkably affordable. Median home price around $120,000. You can buy a solid family home for under $80,000. One Hibbing local posted, "Yeah, the mines aren't what they were, but I live 10 minutes from pristine wilderness, pay almost nothing for a house, and the summers are perfect." Dylan got famous singing about leaving. "I'm staying. Winters are brutal, we're talking -30 wind chills. The job market is limited to healthcare, remaining mining operations, and whatever you can do remotely." Young people continue to leave for the Twin Cities. The opioid crisis has hit range communities hard. Would you embrace the Iron Range silence, where Bob Dylan first learned to sing about emptiness? Or would Minnesota's long winters drive you out like so many before you? Number 3. Niagara Falls, New York. The honeymoon capital of broken dreams, Niagara Falls. New York was once America's honeymoon capital, a neon-lit wonderland of motels, wax museums, and tourist traps designed to separate newlyweds from their wedding gift cash. In 1980, the city still sparkled. The falls were immortal, obviously, but the town around them, that was booming too. Hotels lined the streets. Factory workers from the chemical plants and paper mills bought houses, raised families, lived the American dream with a waterfall view. This was where the 1950s honeymoon fantasy was still alive: heart-shaped bathtubs, mirrored ceilings, and just married signs in every parking lot. Then came Love Canal. In 1978, the world learned that Hooker Chemical had buried 21,000 tons of toxic waste beneath a residential neighborhood. Families were evacuated. The national news showed images of chemical burns, birth defects, and suburban homes sitting atop a poison wasteland. The story defined Niagara Falls to the world. Manufacturing fled. Tourism dropped. The population fell from 100,000 in 1960 to 71,000 in 1990 to just over 48,000 today. The honeymoon was over. Niagara Falls, and why is the purest example of 1980s decay on this list? The neon signs still exist, they're just mostly burned out. Motel after motel lines the main drags, their vacancy signs permanently lit when they light at all, their pools drained, their honeymoon suites locked behind decades of crime. There's a wax museum that closed in the 90s, the figures still visible through the window if you press your face close enough. Souvenir shops sell cake canes and shot glasses to tourists who wandered across from the Canadian side and immediately regretted it. The downtown is a study in contrast, a few rehab blocks near the state park, surrounded by miles of boarded windows, vacant lots, and parking garages serving a crowd that stopped coming. People live here because it's cheap. Houses can be bought for under $50,000, sometimes under $30,000 for the real fixer-uppers. The Canadian side is a 10-minute walk across the Rainbow Bridge, offering access to a functional economy. And for some, the proximity to natural wonder, one of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth, is worth the urban decay surrounding it. One local wrote, "I wake up every morning to the sound of millions of gallons of water plummeting into a gorge. Then I walk past 3 abandoned motels to get coffee. It's beautiful and depressing. Mostly beautiful. Okay, mostly depressing, but beautiful. Poverty rates are staggering. Over 30% of residents live below the poverty line. Crime is elevated. The infrastructure is crumbling. Schools are underfunded. The economy is heavily dependent on the Casino Seneca Niagara, which employs thousands, but hasn't reversed the decline. And across the river, the Canadian side gleams, a constant reminder of what investment and urban planning could have done. Could you find wonder in living beside one of nature's greatest spectacles while surrounded by one of America's greatest failures? Or would the contrast be too cruel? Number 2. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Gold-plated poverty. Atlantic City in 1980 was supposed to be America's Las Vegas East. Casinos had just been legalized in 1976, and developers descended like gold-fevered prospectors. By the mid-80s, the boardwalk glittered with new towers: Trump Plaza, Caesars, Harris, the Tropicana. Money poured in. Headlines promised a renaissance. Atlantic City is BACK, they said, and for a moment, it looked true. The casinos employed tens of thousands. The boardwalk pulsed with tourists. The Miss America pageant still crowned queens here. For one brief, shining decade, Atlantic City was the comeback kid of American cities. But the money never left the boardwalk. The casinos were designed to trap guests inside: free drinks, no windows, constant stimulation, so tourists gambled, ate, and slept without ever entering the actual city. The communities just blocks from the casino towers saw almost nothing. Then competition came. Casinos opened in Connecticut, Philadelphia, everywhere. Atlantic City's monopoly evaporated. In 2014, for casinos closed in a single year, the rebel at the point for billion-dollar bet on the future went bankrupt twice before becoming a footnote. The death blow. Pick any year from 2008 to 2016. Each one brought more closures, more layoffs, more decay. Walk one block off the boardwalk and the gold plating peels away. Check cashing stores, boarded up storefronts, empty lots where hotels once stood. The Trump Plaza, once the crown jewel of the Donald's empire, was imploded in 2021, its skeleton broadcast on national TV. The aesthetic is surreal, glittering casino towers surrounded by poverty so dense it feels like a different country. Motels that once served middle-class families now serve the unhoused. The boardwalk's glory days are memorialized in faded murals and sun-bleached advertisements. And those zombie malls, Atlantic City has them to the pier shops, once a luxury outlet destination, now a shadow of its former self. anchored by ghosts. Atlantic City's year-round residents, about 38,000 of them stay because it's home. Many work in the remaining casinos. Housing is cheap. You can rent an apartment for $900 in a city 60 miles from Philadelphia and $120 from New York. For those without other options, it's a foothold. One local posted, "I walked past a $500 million casino to get to my $700 month apartment. My neighbor is a retired showgirl who has been here since 1979. She says the city has died 3 times and come back twice. She's betting on a third resurrection. I'm less sure. Poverty rates exceed 35%. Crime is high. Drug use is rampant. The casinos created demand for late-night everything, and dealers followed. The public schools are among the worst funded in New Jersey. The economy is almost entirely dependent on an industry that's bleeding out, and the environmental threats. Rising sea levels and increasingly powerful storms put the entire island at risk. Climate scientists predict significant flooding by 2050. Would you roll the dice on Atlantic City betting that the comeback story isn't over? Or would the odds feel too long in a city built on gambling? Number 1, Gary, Indiana, the king of rock. Number 1, Gary, Indiana. The king of rock. Gary, Indiana was supposed to be a utopia. In 1906, U.S. Steel built a city from scratch, a model industrial community designed to house the workers of the largest steel mill on Earth. By 1960, Gary had 180,000 residents, a vibrant downtown, and a black middle class that was the envy of the industrial Midwest. In 1980, Gary still believed. The mills were struggling, but they were open. Michael Jackson, born here in 1958, had just released Off the Wall, proving that kids from Gary could become gods. The city celebrated its native son even as the foundations began to crack. This was American. Manufacturing at its most confident. Big jobs, big buildings, big families, big future. Steel collapsed. Imports flooded in. Many mills offered cheaper alternatives. U.S. Steel cut and cut again from 30,000 steel jobs at its peak. Gary was down to a few thousand by 1990. The population hemorrhaged. 180,000 became 100,000, became 80,000, became 69,000 today. The year the music died. 1983, the same year Michael Jackson released Thriller and became the most famous person on Earth. While Thriller sold 70 million copies, Gary was losing 10% of its population. Gary is the crown jewel of American urban decay. Nowhere else in the country can you find this combination of architectural grandeur and utter devastation. The City Methodist Church, built in 1926, is one of the most photographed ruins in America. Its Gothic arches are now open to the sky, trees growing through the sanctuary. Stained glass windows shattered but still beautiful. Urban explorers travel from around the world to photograph its decay. The Palace Theater, a 1925 movie palace, sits hollow, its ornate plasterwork crumbling. Its lobby flooded, its marquee long dark. The Genesis Convention Center looks like a nuclear bomb hit it. Entire blocks of downtown are rubble, and the residential neighborhoods. Block after block of abandoned homes, some stripped to their frames. Others still holding furniture that's been rotting for decades. There are streets where you're the only living person visible. The silence is profound. But here's the thing, the architecture is world-class. Gary wasn't a poor town that died poor. It was a rich town that died wealthy in buildings but poor in people. The contrast is what makes. It's so haunting to see what America built and what America abandoned. Why does anyone still live in Gary? Because leaving costs money and staying is almost free. You can buy a house in Gary for $10,000, sometimes for $1 at auction. For the 69,000 remaining residents, many of whom are elderly, this is home. Their parents worked in the mills. Their churches are here. Their family plots are in the cemeteries. There's also hope, fragile, maybe delusional, but real. A new mayor, a new steel investment, a new generation trying to reclaim something from the wreckage. One Gary native wrote, "People ask me why I stay, because this is the Jackson family's hometown, because my grandmother helped build this place, because someone has to remember what America promised and broke. I'm not leaving, I'm witnessing." Gary's statistics are apocalyptic. Poverty rate over 30%. Violent crime rate among the highest in the nation. Population less than 40% of its peak. The tax base is so depleted that basic services struggle. Entire sections of the city have been officially abandoned. City planners call it right-sizing. The infrastructure is failing. Fire stations have closed. Police response times are long. The schools are underfunded and under-enrolled. And the environmental legacy of steel. The soil is contaminated. The air quality is compromised. Lake Michigan's industrial coastline tells the story of a century of pollution, but still, people stay. Still, people fight. Still, the ruins stand monuments to what American manufacturing once was, and warnings about what happens when the money leaves. Could you find meaning in Gary's ruins, the decayed grandeur, the stubborn survivors, the ghost of Michael Jackson singing from every abandoned block? Or would the weight of so much American tragedy crush whatever hope you brought with you?